So, welcome everyone. Today, I am beyond delighted to be introducing to you Pam Gregory, astrologer. And I know that you all know who she is. And Pam, you're so much more than an astrologer. You really are a light in the dark. And I remember actually, primarily during the COVID years, friends of mine would send me your forecasts as all of us were kind of rolling through dark night of the souls, even though we knew the trajectory overall was to bring in consciousness. I think there were moments for everyone when we were like very overwhelmed, and then your forecast would come in. And it's like having a spiritual agony aunt or something to listen to. So I do want to say, thank you for all that you do in a really heartfelt way. I really believe that you've assisted a lot of people through the last few years. So welcome and thank you for who you are.
Bless you. I'm very touched by that. Thank you so much. I mean, we've all got our piece of the puzzle in this huge transition, and I'm just happy if I'm helping people. And the principles are terribly simple, really. I call myself a proud bumpkin because I'm very connected to nature. Nothing is complicated, and maybe that's why it helps people, because it's so simple and accessible. The things I talk about, but oddly, just by chance, because knowing this was coming up today, Sarita, I happened to be reading the last chapter of the book that I wrote in. Well, it's the last chapter I wrote in 2017. And it said 2020 stands out as a very important and pivotal year astrologically. For those alive now, it'll certainly be one of the greatest years of change and paradigm shift. And this new paradigm will continue into 2021 and well beyond. We will think of life, how life was before 2020, and then how it is after. And also talk about things coming to a peak in 2020, great polarization between the traditional controls in society and people more and more from the grassroots wanting to avoid those social controls. This will accelerate the breakdown of those traditional structures. And I wrote that in 2017. I thought, wow, that's not bad.
Amazing. I mean, you're a true seer, actually. In my shamanic studies, part of what we were trained in was seership, and I I I feel like what I do with my work is I kind of see into people's bodies. I look at their geometry, their energy, their consciousness, and I try and show them how to heal themselves and come into the truth of who they are. And I feel like you're doing exactly the same thing, but like with these huge bodies, the stars, the planets, and you're seeing the geometry and the consciousness of all of those. And I wanted to ask you, why, in your words, do you think it is so important that these small bodies understand and work with the large bodies, especially in terms of our path of, expanding our consciousness and the ascension path, basically? Why is it so important that we understand what's going on out there?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Sarita. It's really, I think, that they give us a kind of cosmic weather forecast. And if we understand that, and if we can resonate with it, then we have cosmic winds helping us, as it were. If we don't understand what's going on, we can resist and get into negative energies of frustration and anger, and things aren't flowing properly, and I can't get what I want. And that broadcasts as a negative frequency, which attracts more lack and anger and frustration. So I think understanding that bigger picture, it's just almost like if you watch a regular weather forecast, and if it's going to be a big rainstorm tomorrow, you then have information to say, either I can stay at home for that period of time, or I can take an umbrella with me. I now have informed choice. But if you didn't know that, you might be caught short in thunderous rain. So it's in a way, it's as simple as that. But it helps us evolve our choices, I think, get to a higher state of our choices. Of each planetary archetype has specific meaning. And so if we can understand that, again, we have this cooperational resonance that goes on. For instance, if somebody is going through a Saturn transit And at work, they have a lot of work to do, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork. If they behave as if they're having a Uranus transit and kind of leave work early, bunk off, have a row with the boss, it's not going to work out very well. But if they follow the lesson of Saturn, keep their head down, work very hard, Saturn can turn lead into gold, and they might get a promotion at the end of that or some recognition because they're following the archetypal meaning of Saturn. Equally, if you've got a Uranus transit, which is all about taking risks, breaking out of the mold, breaking up stale patterns, being much more individually creative and self-expressive, and if you behave then as if you're having a Saturn transit and just play by the rules and keep your head, you're going to miss some incredible out of the box, out of the blue opportunities that Uranus is offering you. So understanding the archetypes helps us to fulfill our potential, I think, have smoother, easier lives. I mean, not that astrologers have perfect lives, don't get me wrong, but it helps us fulfill our potential at a higher level than if we didn't have that information.
So, so do you really feel, because they're, if you like, bigger bodies of consciousness, that they have a far more influential pull on our smaller bodies of consciousness? So because one of my questions for later, but it's coming up now, is, you know, can we even go against this type of momentum? Will that pull, you know, the way that the moon, you know, pulls the sea, eventually just pull us into line, whether we come screaming and shouting? You know, how much influence do you believe we have over those, or are they really, you know, is it the other way around? Because obviously we're all quantumly entangled. Have we come from those larger bodies, you know, those larger galactic systems? What's your kind of, it seems to
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a fact that we're made of stardust.
yeah,
We're made of the same physical substances as the stars. Even Professor Brian Cox says that, and he's no fan of astrology. So, and I think we will very soon start to reconnect to our galactic family. And that will be amazing. It really will, because we'll have this remembrance. And many people channel, as you know, Sarita.
yeah.
I mean, many people out there channeling the Arcturians and the Palladians. And so this energy is coming in right now, which is absolutely wonderful. So it's an interesting question that you ask, because in yes, of course we have free will. I very much believe we have free will, because your birth chart is your unique sheet of music, and we can either butcher that and make an absolute pig's ear of it, or we can play it magnificently in the world and have a really big life and help a lot of people. And over my many years of study, I've sort of seen how that's played out. In fact, I remember two men in particular, and their birth charts were very, very close in time and geography. And they'd had very parallel patterns in life. They got married at the same time, they had children at the same time, they were both very involved with music. But one of the chaps was teaching music at the local comprehensive school, and the other one was actually part of an international philharmonic orchestra, traveled all over the world. And this was not my judgment, because it's not up to me to make that judgment, but the chap at the local comprehensive school really felt he hadn't fulfilled his potential.
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to how fully and magnificently we can play the music. Now, but you then get on to a bigger question of recognizing that the birth chart is merely, it's both at the same time, it's an inner map of your psyche, and it's a map of the heavens at the same time. So it's an in here and an out there at the same moment. So the microcosm and the macrocosm. And then it starts to blow your mind a bit and sort of fall out of your ears. But if we take it one step further than that, I mean, in the ancient sages and even the Buddhist belief that there's no out there,
Yeah.
objective reality. It is merely our projected subjective reality. And so, is there really an out there? Or is everything, is the entire universe, the entire cosmos inside us? And all of that is just a hologram. Am I making sense? Sorry
Yes,
to.
I mean, this is what I teach. I teach that we're living in a holographic reality and everything is within us. And so this leads on to another question, really. So everything leads within us, and we have these electromagnetic fields around our bodies, which I believe contain our projected reality. And what's happening is they're kind of in the non-ordinary realm or the invisible realm. They're connecting and speaking to one another. So that what's happening is that we're drawing into the people and places and events are those resonant frequency matches to what we're emitting. So then that leads on to the question, if well, I've got loads of questions for you, but how much do you think, you've written on your website, that I can't remember what it is exactly, the astrology is already reflecting our evolution of consciousness. But how much do you think you're influencing your readings? And is it because, you're emitting this idea that we're in an ascension process? Therefore, the astrological geometry that you're perceiving is a reflection of that. And then you're calling towards you people like myself and all of your listeners who align with that certain projection, because obviously I think you're aware of this. We're creating timelines and every now and moment. It's so complicated, but it's like we're fractals of source consciousness, and it's all coming from the within and the without. So it's like, what's influencing what? How much do you feel you're influencing your own forecasts?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And yes, just to echo your point, we can only experience things in our life that we are a frequency match to. Everything has
Absolutely.
to be a frequency match because the universe is just a mirror. And that's a very good question. And I've never been asked it before. And I actually feel a huge responsibility in what I say, because I know people follow me, and in tough times particularly, whether it's a doctor, well, perhaps less so these days, but if it's a person in some kind of authority, you kind of hang on every word. Every word is a weapon, if you like. Every word
It's
is
true.
charged. So I'm very, very aware of that level of responsibility. And it's not in my nature to be a gloom and doomer. I'm a relentlessly optimistic person. But there is latitude in every planetary expression, every piece of planetary geometry, there's latitude. Now, I could focus on the worst case manifestation, but why would I do that?
Yeah.
So I will always, because it's in my nature, and because of the situation we're living in the world and have this incredible, unique evolutionary opportunity right now, why would I do that? So I am going to explain and enlarge upon the best possible manifestation. And if I'm influencing a lot of people, I mean, bring it on. Because every single one of us has a part in altering the morphogenic field. And by the laws of physics, and I say this about my incredibly simple 15-minute meditation on a Sunday evening, 7 o'clock UK time. And I didn't want Zoom links and admin and all the rest. It was an idea that people come together all over the world as if they're holding hands. They set a clear intention to bring in a more loving, abundant new earth. People are having amazing experiences. I just want people to feel love, joy, compassion, peace, gratitude, all of those wonderful emotions. And people are starting to see that we're becoming like Sufi dancers. We're all connecting because we're on a similar frequency, people who follow my work. And we're starting to spin with light, and that light is getting bigger and wider, and it's covering the whole earth, and the energy is getting stronger every week, like a tsunami of light. And why wouldn't we do that?
Absolutely.
Do that. So because of my relentless optimism, I am going to keep banging that drum of, look, this is the biggest evolutionary opportunity we've had in any lifetime. So we have to absolutely optimize that. And the astrology helps us enormously in understanding what's going on with that. But let's go for it. Let's achieve the biggest and the best and the greatest, because why would we plan to fall short? So that's why I will never be a gloom and doomer. I will try and encourage everybody to their maximum potential. Because, I mean, why wouldn't we do that? Especially in these, especially knowing the challenges in these times, why would we do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing is that, well, that's a complicated thing, isn't it? Because there are many people who are, if you like, programmed or traumatized in certain ways, that they're unconsciously creating negativity, even though I don't think it's any human's life path to want to do that. And I think our natural trajectory is one of evolution. That's it. We're all evolving, aren't we? However, if we haven't on a personal level dealt with our shadow aspects and the deep unconscious and where we've come from with all of this programming, and obviously I'm sure all of your listeners and mine too are aware that there's another agenda going on, which I believe is actually just it's kind of squeezing us into the light, because then we're getting the opportunity to look at the contrast and then choose one or the other. But I think for many people, it's not even, they're not even aware that they can choose a positive path, because they are running on the unconscious all of the time. And I think much of what we're seeing is the unconscious shadow kind of rising up and making itself known to us so that we can transmute it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you must have in your past life already done a certain amount of the work. Past life or in this life, Pam,
I'm going to choose a lifetime of cruising next time for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And yes, what you say is absolutely right, Sarita. We only grow through the contrast.
Yeah.
We only grow. It's like shining a bright light into dark corners with cockroaches and beetles and cobwebs and nasty things that we didn't see before. And I think that has to happen in order to propel us into something better. That's absolutely essential, because if it was easy peasy, before 2020, we were rumbling along in a reasonably comfortable existence, at least in most the Western world. So there was no need to really make any kind of evolutionary jump. It was same old, same old. We had a good job, we had status, we had title, we had money, blah, blah. It was the pandemic that actually forced a change, and certainly globally, it has forced many like-minded people to come together in groups, freedom groups, to say, do you know what? We are absolutely done with this. We want to create a better world. So it acted as a catalyst. There was kind of boomerang effect. So it acted as a catalyst. And those grassroots groups, which is where we're going with the Aquarian energy, they are all over the world. And they're doing amazing things to say, okay, we've each got a piece of the puzzle. What can we do to build a better world? And I'm in a group for about 200 people, as a carpenter, a builder, I'm an astrologer. We've all got a different piece of the puzzle. Yeah. So, but it's fabulous because everybody is super, super, super positive in that we don't want that. We're not going to do that again. So what do we want?
Yeah,
we're going to make it amazing. So, and that I don't believe would have happened without COVID. And COVID was clear as day. That Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 12th of January 2020, I was seeing jackboots on the tarmac. I was seeing contraction, lockdown. It was sort of echoes of Nazi Germany. Didn't know what. I never know the detail of the events, but I thought, wow, something huge coming. But it was a necessary catalyst.
Yeah.
And yes, I very much agree, Sarita, that there are many people who haven't sort of worked through their stuff. I mean, I've had some very, very tough decades in my life. I was ill for 39 years and only got my health sorted out about 6 years ago. There was a lot of fear for decades. It was just tons of stuff. I would not have felt I was responsible and clear and clean enough to have this YouTube channel then. I wouldn't have been useful. I wouldn't have been helpful. So I've had that strong sense of responsibility, and I'm glad I waited to get through all the kind of rubble of it. And actually, this is the best time in life for me, even though a lot of time has passed. It's great because I have such a sense of purpose and momentum in what we're discovering about water, with Veda's beautiful work, Veda Austin's work, and divine consciousness in water. I find that thrilling.
Yeah.
What we're discovering about physics, and with Nassim Haramein, and he's worked out the physics of creation, the physics of reality. I mean, we are on the precipice of amazing times, really amazing, that are going to be unimaginable compared to what we've lived in. Unimaginable. We're going to be making so many jumps. And I think we really are going through not just a transformation as humanity, but a huge metamorphosis. And that doesn't mean to say that there won't be some challenging times, particularly in 2024, I think, because it's a year of really smashing out the rest of the kitchen cupboards. And therefore it'll be lumpy, because everything we've known as reliable structures in life that we thought were long term, whether it's education or politics or the legal system or whatever, the financial system, whatever it is, those systems that appear to be long term and permanent will go through one heck of a shake-up. I think even the Earth itself is going to have some big Earth events, a lot more seismic activity, but we know this is part of Gaia going through her upgrade too. So we just have to, you know, an analogy I often quote, an example I often quote, many years ago when I was in my 20s, you might have heard me say this, I was going off traveling for 5 months all around India and Nepal and trekking the Himalayas on my own. So I was in my mid-20s, 5'2", English, fair lady. So I thought I'd better do some basic martial arts just in case, and I actually needed to use them twice, in fact.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm very glad. So, but it was a very basic series of weekends, and essentially it was just about using your weight and your balance and how to deal with any hostile situation. But one of the things they taught us was how to break a quite thick builder's plank. Big builder's plank. And if you focused on the plank, there was absolutely no way you could break that. You really hurt your hand. If you focused on the obstacle and what is. And the teacher taught us to focus where you want to get to with your hand, 6 inches below the builder's plank. And if you focus on where you wanted to get to, 6 inches below the plank, I broke 3 in a row.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I suddenly hadn't become Hercules. I just shifted my point of focus.
Absolutely, because there's no matter anyway. Well, I mean, there's very little matter in the universe. It's all energy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And I think with the corona, I mean, there's a reason it was called, the crown. I feel like it's like everything just kind of went like this. And I really feel like we called that in. It was like, let's create a volcano that's everyone is going to have to shift. And I think also, looking at your idea of being positive and always choosing, if you like, the higher timeline and looking where you're trying to go, not kind of, I mean, I think at this point, there's still the majority of people are head down, 3D, looking down, not looking up and out at what could be. But I just did a meditation and it was about expanding your light photons. And the idea of it came from this paper, scientific paper, where they discovered that at our resting state, we were emitting something like 20 to 30 light photons per centimeter per second. Have you heard about this paper?
Yes.
Yes. And when we're meditating, it's 100,000. And particularly if we're focusing on another, yes, which I thought was the beautiful kind of sort of little twist in the tale. And I think what Corona did is it started to get people to reach out and focus on one another and to see where we needed to go and to begin to look up and out. And like you, it's just been extraordinary, because during those years, we began to see scientists talking about their soul, about spirituality. They were having to really tap into their conscience. And they were saying, oh, wow, okay, we can't say this anymore because it's not authentically true. And one of the questions I had for you later, which you've already touched on, is this responsibility that you have as an influencer. I think that's just such a great word. And I think it's kind of corrupted in a way, because now, well, maybe it isn't corrupted. Everyone's an influencer, aren't they? We're all influencing something, even if it's just our cat. So, but when you've got something like the internet, which I believe we created so that we could actually learn telepathy.
Yes, I
So,
agree.
yeah, you know how when the phone rings, you know who it is. I think that the internet is the first level of telepathy and letting go, and it's also a level of us having to release lies, because there's so much information out there that we're having to turn within to understand what our actual truth is. Because if you keep looking at all the information, you just get in a complete tiz. And I think so many people are getting in a tiz. And I think I heard you say you got rid of your television about 4 years ago or something.
Got a large plant there now, which is lovely.
How lovely. That's got much more information for you. So I think that's wonderful. So so you feel that when you're giving a forecast, if you like, and if you seem to explain the shadow aspects of the archetypal, mythological, um, trajectories that are coming into play. But then you always say, okay, this is the shadow, be mindful of it. Now let's look over here. Do you think there is actually a kind of, oh, this isn't like a trick question or anything, but do you think there's a kind of overriding shadow of working within the realms of astrology, like there might be in being an influencer? How much of the unconscious that maybe has been programmed into us we could be using in terms of something like astrology to assist in potentially a negative agenda? You kind of, how do you work? I mean, I'm sure you're very conscious of that. Do you tap into your intuition, your heart when you're working with these planets? And also, just if you can remember all that I've just said, also, are you reading the symbols out there in a very perfunctory way, or do you feel like you're tapping into the consciousness of them, like merging with them almost in a shamanic way before you give us what you see, what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, gosh, a lot in that, Sarita.
Sorry. I'm not excited.
Backtrack. Yeah, I think everything in our collective reality we have created from our collective consciousness. That's not a very popular view, but it's come from us. Because if it is true that we create our reality, therefore on a collective level, we must have created the collective experience that we're going through. So that's why I try so hard to encourage people to live at their best. Also, when we're thinking of another, as you say, I mean, the real expert on this is Lynn McTaggart and her Power of Eight groups, because what she's found, and she has a beautiful quote about the highest state of being, the most natural state of being is altruism. Because what she's finding in her Power of Eight groups, and she's got a whole book called Power of Eight, and she runs these groups on an ongoing basis, is that, say, 7 of the people are focused on one of the people in the group that needs healing, and say that's Susan. But it isn't just Susan that gets the healing. Everybody, the other 7, there's a kind of bounce back, and they all get healed too.
Yeah.
So the group energy will magnify the healing energy. And so whenever you come together with a like-minded group, and Nassim Harriman talks about this, how you magnify that energy. And so that's very exciting, because that's very Aquarian. We're coming together in groups. It's like mycelium mushrooms. We're all connecting with each other. So we have this magnificent potential. So those are the first sort of 2 things you raised, I think. And getting to the other question, yes, that's very interesting, because I do try and tune into the consciousness, the frequency of the planets, their archetypes. And I'm increasingly aware, and I've said it in quite a few videos, that I want to go beyond the traditional astrology, because I see it as quite limited. And I think it's important that I kind of share some of the more difficult manifestations, because I don't want to get into spiritual bypassing. We have to acknowledge what may happen, but then say, do not negatively emotionally engage with them. Do not entangle with those. Stay on your eagle's perch. Yes, be aware, observe. Mastery is being aware of the difficulties and still being able to keep your equilibrium. That's mastery. It's not spiritual bypassing and thinking, la, 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 everything's perfect. That isn't mastery. That's just deviation. And so being aware, but saying, okay, I acknowledge that. That's not my timeline. I'm not going to energize and feed that. And, focusing on it is food in the quantum realm. I'm going to go over here because I have free will, and with this wonderful group of people, create something way more beautiful, way more loving. The world we've lived in is not perfect by a long way. This contrast is making that very clear. So I am going to, as long as I'm on this earth, keep on banging that drum about how much power we have as co-creators. And I think we're going to really discover that going through 2024. Do it in really elementary ways, really simple ways. Set a clear intention, you're easily finding a car parking space. Clear intention, I'm now easily already finding my car keys, which I then find in the vegetable rack or somewhere weird. I use Ho'oponopono a lot. If I'm in any kind of difficult situation, which I can't logic my way out of, I'll use Ho'oponopono, that very simple 4-stanza. Yeah. I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. That, you just think it's ridiculous that could make any difference. It has been miraculous, I have to say. I've laughed out loud when that has changed a dynamic of something that I thought was very difficult. I mean, I've just laughed out loud. So have these really simple tools in your toolkit. Live with more intentionality. Be very aware of the energy, the frequency that you're broadcasting. I really catch myself now if I'm going, no, we're not, you've done that to death. We're not going to do that again. And so I'm much more conscious of when I go unconscious, much more. So if I'm on a negative, so that's not going to work very well. Last time you tried, didn't we? I will flick it into, wow, look at the sky, look at the light today. And I've got my rolling mantras. I'm the light, I'm the love, I'm the truth, I am. I'll flick it, and I live in a world of magic and miracles. Miracles work for me. So I'll flick instantly into one of those, and I'll keep rolling it around my head like rosary beads, because it will get me to a better state and stop that negative unconscious run. Yeah. So I'm quite like a thought policeman. And I think becoming conscious of your unconscious is the first step. Really.
It's very hard. When you first begin, it just feels insurmountable, doesn't it? Because you start to see all your thoughts and you're like, they're just enormous. And I don't know if you've experienced this as well. Sometimes I get thoughts in my head or images that I know are not even mine. Where on earth are they coming from? Because obviously we are unconsciously seeing much more of the visible light spectrum than we're conscious of. So there's a lot more out there. And as we become more aware of the unconscious, that obviously expands. But when you beginning to master your own thoughts, it's a good few years of hardcore self-analysis and mastery and rising above. So yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned that. How do you, well, I'll let you finish.
Just to say, Sarita, as well, dead simple thing you can do to get you into the habit of this, and I say it so often, stick Post-it notes on your fridge, your bathroom mirror, your kitchen cupboards. What are you thinking about? What's your frequency? Just to get you in that habit of where's my head now? Because if we're cooking or eating or whatever we're doing, we can so easily just drift, or we can go down the scroll hole of social media. And again, referencing something you said earlier, particularly with Pluto moving into Aquarius tomorrow, and essentially for the next 20 years, with all the AI that's going to come in, we aren't going to know what's true and what's not. There's going to be so much more smoke and mirrors. So we can go, really big, scary thing. It may not exist at all. And actually linked to that. So again, your reference point is inner, not outer. Live from the inside out, not the outside in. And what I think has happened in the world very skillfully is an idea is floated on the nightly news, and a lot of the population go, that's a really big, scary thing. And they actually obediently then manifest.
They create it. Yeah.
Even when it was completely invisible to start, there was nothing there. So we are very obedient in that way. Mm-hmm. And moving into Aquarian energy much more, there's going to be less obedience. And I don't mean that in any kind of violent confrontational way. It's just this is a big year of awakening, a big year of rebellion. Again, not in any aggressive way, but just saying, do you know what? This isn't working for me perfectly. So therefore, because I know my power as a co-creator, I'm going to construct something different. So humanity is really going to rise up in that higher level of consciousness. And it's almost like the Buckminster Fuller idea, if you don't have to necessarily fight and demolish what is currently there, because in a way you're still operating in the same paradigm. Absolutely. You have to go beyond it and create something so amazing. Everybody says, oh, I'd much rather be over there. That looks wonderful. And that's what I'm trying to do with those dead simple 15-minute meditations on a Sunday evening.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And talking back to the whole Lynn McTaggart thing, is I do a lot of shamanic ceremony, and what I've discovered, excuse me, is that when you're in a group, I don't know, doing some kind of vast ceremony, what generally happens is you've got this exponential increase of energy and intention, because obviously the more you put in is the more you get out. But what I found is if one person in the group is, let's say, unconscious about an aspect of themselves that needs healing, the others won't be. So theirs gets healed, and then they're reflecting something that you're unconscious about, and they heal yours. And that's why there's this exponential increase, because together we have more conscious aspects. And I think this is the whole kind of beauty. And I think the other thing is that we're beginning to really know that we are part of the, if you like, the positive aspect of the climate crisis agenda thing that's playing out is that many people are beginning to work out that that we need Earth, let's say on a really kind of basic level. But for those of us on this path, we're beginning to understand that we are Earth. That's a kind of very different thing. We are part and parcel of the consciousness of that. And there's a kind of group escalation. It's like, is Earth elevating us? Are we elevating Earth? Like, what's happening? There's a kind of beautiful, exactly. The loop there. And I think, and drawing back to something else you said with the AI, we're not going to know what's real and what's not, even if you're essentially asleep at the wheel of your own life, you're unconscious. At some point, you're going to realize that there are bots out there that look human that are telling you your nightly news or whatever. And you cannot trust anything out there just on a fundamental physical level anymore. So even those who, if you like, don't want to wake up because it's intrinsically painful, or, for whatever reason, they don't want to wake up, they're literally going to be pulled kind of kicking and screaming into awakening, because it's going to be so obvious out there, isn't it? I wanted to
and it's just the energy, it's just the frequency, it's the light that is going to change it. And I always thought over the years, I've said it's going to be the light. It isn't going to take decades and decades. It's going to be something connected to the light. And this very high frequency of light, there's more light on the Earth apparently than we've ever had before, because we're moving through the photon belt and part of the ripples in the galactic current sheet. So this is so exciting. So even if people don't study stuff in the way that you and I and lots of other people do, they're going to be carried, many of them, on this wave of light, which is so incredible. And yes, we are all at one. The dwarf planets, so many of them have this, like Homer has they have this shamanic connection. They have this deep instinctive connection to the Earth. And I'm always reminded of Lemurian times when everything was oneness. They saw themselves as light beings that were all part of a oneness connected to the trees, the animals, the birds, the slugs, the snails, the earth, everything, the cosmos, everything was one consciousness. And I honestly believe that's how it is. I honestly do. And that's very exciting, actually, if we see it in that way.
Yeah, I think more and more, certainly as I've become more conscious, I remember, I think I saw someone about a year ago just kill a moth without even thinking about it. And my whole body just went, and I was like, Wow, Sarita, that's kind of full on. And I think we're getting to this point where we can't harm because we're beginning to feel the truth of who we are, which is this interconnected thing that's going on. And just coming back to that, back again a few threads is, if there's, we're talking about influences and are the planets influencing us, or what's happening in terms of timelines and things like that. There's obviously, galactic beings. So I know you've just done some videos on the blue beings of light that are coming in. I've actually been seeing blue light everywhere for a few years, and so have many of my followers. And you've got the Palladians, the Arcturians, all of these type of people. So they're obviously galactic beings on their planets or in their star systems. And there must be a longing with us, because that's what we come from, to connect into that. And they must be longing to reconnect with us in some way. And then because they're I imagine they're operating from a higher dimensionality, they must be pulling us as well in some way. I mean, do you get a sense of this when you're doing your forecasts?
Yes, I do. And I think everybody's psychic sensitivity is increasing. I mean, I'm not aware of channeling any particular beings. People constantly tell me I am, but I'm not aware of it at all. So, I just try and get through my days. But people tell me that I am, and certainly those higher beings, because they are higher beings, they're operating on higher dimensions, have been through these kinds of evolutions. So they're very keen for us to help. But also, as I understand it, the Earth has a pivotal role in the entire galaxy. So our evolution is very much a key jigsaw puzzle of the evolution of the entire galaxy. That's why it's so crucial for us to get it right, and that's why they have such an interest in it. And I do think, although they're not supposed to interfere, I do think they help us in all kinds of ways to prevent extreme disasters, and that kind of thing. So I very much there to benefit us, and I think the more we can hear them. I mean, there's certain people I follow. Daniel Scranton is a very good guy to follow. He channels the Arcturians, and I follow his work. There are many people. I mean, Magenta Pixie channels the White Wing Collective of Nine. There's some very good people out there. So the more we can connect to those messages, that information coming in, I think the easier our journey will be through this evolution, because I think they are only there to benefit us. They are only there to help us.
Yeah, I would agree. So going back to, well, there was a piece of that you kind of answered and didn't answer. Do you feel like you're kind of merging your consciousness when you're doing your astro? Because
Yes.
it feels very shamanic to me what you're doing, and it is like a merging, and then you're pulling out the personality and the language,
Yeah,
and translating it for us.
yes, the dwarf planets particularly have this connection. I'm so connected to nature. Nature's always been my go-to place, my sanctuary, my touchstone. But yes, particularly when I go off-piste in those videos, when I say things I wasn't planning to. I'm not just talking dates and degrees and minutes where, oh, I don't know where this came from. Particularly when I kind of have those free-flowing bits, I don't know where they come from.
Oh,
And those are the most helpful pieces. Everybody said, I don't understand a word of the astrology, but what you said there was really helpful. So that's when I feel the consciousness of the planets really coming through, particularly the dwarf planets, because there are our higher octave of consciousness where we're headed to. And there's going to be so much, Sarita, of the out there that is going to come into us. We are going to go through absolute quantum leaps in our consciousness. This year is going to happen really all the way through the year, but April is a particularly big month for that to happen, where it's kind of boom, paradigm shift. And they are going to just keep on coming this year to get us to a very different place in the next couple of years.
And if you,
yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's it. I'm done. Yep.
Yeah. So, and as far as I understand it, there have been new sort of I think the dwarf, I really don't know much about astrology, but the dwarf planets that have been coming in are new, and there's other planetary bodies and star systems that have been coming in that are newer. And so when you were talking about that you feel like astrology is changing, do you feel like that, just like we are, becoming more aware of astrology on a multidimensional level, like we are becoming aware of ourselves as multidimensional beings?
100%, 100%. And it's not that they are new, they've been there forever. It's that our perception has opened up, because most of these dwarf planets were discovered round about the turn of 1999 going to the early 2000s. So they've only been discovered for around 20 years, which is an absolute drop in the bucket for astrology.
Yeah.
Last for thousands of years. And it is not that they are new, is that we have a new perception. We have a more expanded multidimensional perception. And there's so many of them out there we've yet to discover. It's partly because our consciousness has shifted, it's partly because the telescopes are better, but it's also partly because our consciousness has shifted to enable us to start to accommodate them, to integrate them into our consciousness. So again, we have this microcosm, macrocosm thing going on. And there's a wonderful astronomer called Mike Brown, who lives in Tucson, Arizona, who has discovered many of these. And thank goodness he has a very good understanding of mythology. And so therefore he always gets the time, the day, the exact discovery time. So we've got a chart, a discovery chart, but he also seems to choose the name linked to myth, which perfectly reflects the symbolism we start to see playing out in people's birth charts. It's quite remarkable. And of course, there's no surprises there. Everything is synchronicity. So that's very helpful. And again, that's no surprise that he is discovering a lot of these. So yes, it gets very exciting because they orbit largely beyond the orbit of Pluto. They're out in deep space. And so we're shifting from the kind of personality planets, the bread and butter planets, the personality planets, to a different state where, if you talk to a North American Indian person and ask their name, they won't give you their personal name. They will give you the name of the tribe, the soul group that they're associated with. So we are going to go beyond this age of individualism, which has been so strong for material territorialism, to identify more, and I mean this in the most positive way, with group consciousness. With a group consciousness that is multidimensional, it's high frequency, it's full of light, it's full of creativity, it's full of compassion, it's full of love. I don't mean groupthink in the way that the shadow stories can. So this is where we are headed, and that kind of community collaboration is absolutely bullseye in Aquarian energy, and it's very much linked to the work of Lynn McTaggart, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, etc., etc. This is how ancient cultures used to operate as well, with the complete support of the tribe. When babies are born, they sing the song of the baby. The whole tribe gets together. It's beautiful, that kind of community support. They are equally a family of frequency. So, and because in our modern society we felt much more separate than that, in a very simplistic way, that's what I'm trying to create with my viewers.
That's interesting, because you're like, those are the standard astrological aspects have been the personality, which is kind of the ego, isn't it, in a way. And now we're going out into the deep space, the source consciousness, and seeing what's really out there. I wanted to ask you about timeline splitting. Now, obviously, I feel that we're creating a new timeline in every now moment, but on a collective level, certainly I and many seers, and I think you have alluded to this as well, please do correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a definitive timeline split. And it was very painful, actually, for a while back there, because you were talking to your loved ones and it was like they didn't understand anything you were saying, particularly in the COVID era, and they couldn't understand anything you were on about. It was like you're on completely different timelines. And what I've seen or felt is that they have split now, and the gap between there's no bridge now. So it's like we can observe this other timeline and we can have empathy for it, but it's I feel very much like I'm thriving, even though I can see there's a timeline that really isn't. And I wondered how that's showing up, if it is showing up for you in the astrology. And if it is, are you then seeing an astrological forecast for the dominant timeline, which I believe is the essential one, but we're going to believe it's the essential one because that's the trajectory we're on. But can you see another one? Is there, how does that work for you?
Okay, a lot there again. Yes, I do think there has been a split because I mean, my lovely neighbours all around me, they are, very much following a conventional narrative, and that's fine. That's their world, and I'm not. But we, as a group of like minds, have created that higher timeline, and it's getting higher all the time. I believe we just keep on creating higher and higher because that's where our focus and attention is. So I do believe there's a split. Eventually we'll come back to unity consciousness one way or another.
I
So
believe
this
that
is
too. Yeah.
forever. But they're two very clear, it's like two different consensus realities in a way. And I also feel we're in a period of void to some extent. At the moment, particularly these next few months, where we've stepped away from the old 3D world as defining our world, and it's crumbling. But we need to see even more manifestation, even more green shoots of new earth to even more timeline, and it's happening. I mean, all the time, and it'll be very, very strong next year. But with regard, do I see that in the astrology? No, I don't. In that, the astrology always gives me, and I said this in my work all the way through, that the astrology gives me the pattern. It does not give the frequency. So our latitude as human beings comes in the frequency. How are we going to play the music? Are we going to butcher it, or are we going to make it magnificent? So with each astrological moment, you can play it at a low frequency, or you can play it at a very high frequency. That's where our free will comes in. And I believe that very strongly. So I don't believe that astrology defines your frequency. It just gives you the pattern. It just gives you the piece of music. Does that make sense, Cerise?
Yes, that's clarified it a lot. So it's like it's the same astrology, but it's the choice of the dominant timeline that you're choosing, how you're what
Absolutely.
that momentum is taking you, basically.
I endlessly about where's your focus, where's your attention, what choice are you making, on and on and on in every video, one way or another. I bang on about that because we have that choice. So why would you go in the more difficult timeline when there's all this magnificence that's going to come that we can barely describe? It's going to be so amazing with no new healing technologies and anti-gravity transport and connecting with our galactic relatives, and it's going to be just amazing. And lots of people are talking about that. It's not just me, so I'm not going crazy. But why would you make the lesser choice? And that's why I try in the videos to make people aware of there is a choice.
Yeah.
But first of all, you've got to become conscious of what may be currently unconscious.
Absolutely. And I know that you're a very busy lady and we're getting to the end of the hour. So I just wanted to ask you one more question, because a lot of my followers are hardcore meditators. We love meditating. And I wondered, what was your predominant, I know that you meditate as well, and I know that you advocate for coming back to simplicity, and all the stuff that I teach, I keep coming back to presence heals everything. That's where I've got to, really. And I wondered what, on a personal level, your most beneficial practices that you do for yourself when things just get too much, when you're triggered, when it all gets tough, or even just to bring yourself into alignment. What is your personal preference meditation practice?
Yeah, thank you. Nobody's asked that ever. Yes, and on the point of simplicity, of course, if you're living from the inside out, not the outside in, that's simple. Outside in is really complicated. You've
Yeah.
got 10,000 problems out there. So I really do all the things I've talked about. I mean, weather permitting, it was -5 here last night. So weather permitting, as soon as spring comes, I'll have bare feet on the grass. I will just sit in my garden and I'll listen to the birds and I'll look at the blue sky and I will just breathe and be blank and just completely simple kind of tuning in. I'll listen to the birds and then I'll try and hear the sound beyond the birds. And is there a sound beyond that? This kind of expansive Buddha state, if you like. But also, I do quite vigorous breath work every day because that actually settles down the vagus nerve as well. I
Well, like
do.
fire breath and sort of alkaline breathing and those types of things.
That's the thing that, I've done about half a century of yoga, and also I did some Buteyko breath work. So now I do something called Soma breath, which is a combination of Wim Hof and pranayama and a whole bunch of things. So I do that. That's quite vigorous, but then very often I will just literally shut my eyes and I do what I suggest to other people. I just drop into my body, into my breath. And I just literally put 100% focus on the breath. And I just watch and feel how that brings down cortisol levels, crazy busy mind, just warmth. And I will literally just put 100% focus on the breath and I'll just watch it slow and deepen. And I can feel bliss coming in. The more I do that, I just feel bliss. I feel complete bliss. And I don't want it to end. I mean, how simple is that? We don't have to go on a course, we don't have to buy a book, we don't have to spend money. We just literally close our eyes and watch our breath. And bliss codes are coming in big time. So just drop into the bliss. That is a beautiful place for your physiology, your health, your creativity. Drop into bliss as often as you can in your day. That's simple.
That's beautiful. And I think the thing is I think a lot of people forget this, but we are ascending through the body.
Yeah.
So this is where we're going to find the divine. So I love that practice. And yes, it's been so lovely to speak to you. I really do appreciate the time that you've taken to be with me and with my viewers. Thank you so much, Pam, and thank you for everything that you do and continue to do for all of us.
No, bless you, Sarita. I've loved it, actually. You've asked some very different questions that have made me think a bit. So it's been really super. And I just send love to everybody out there. And remember that analogy. Think 6 inches below the builder's plank. And it's much easier. Focus on where you want to get to. Don't focus on the obstacle. Focus on where you want to get to. And we'll come together and we will rock it.
Oh, we're rocking it. It's happening. Thank you so much, Pam.
Yeah, love to everyone out there. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.